the circle graphs or pie charts. So we're beginning our probability and statistics module. So you've probably seen these before. This is an example right here. I took these from the lesson. So you might have seen this if you've already done this lesson, but I thought they were good examples for us to look at. So that's what we're going to start with. So a circle graph or a pie chart is used to show how the total amount of something is divided into parts. So we can separate it into different sections out of the whole. Let me let the rest of these people in. There we go. So in this first example, we have different number of students and their preference of pets, okay, or animals. So here we've got all the students represented in this pie chart, and it tells us the percentage of the students that like each type of animal or pet. So for example, it said that 30% of the students preferred dogs, which means 30 out of 100. If we were sampling 100 students, we would expect 30 of them to prefer dogs. If we looked at another section like birds, where it says 18%, we know every percentage is out of 100. So again, if we were sampling 100 students, we would expect 18 of them to say birds. Okay, so that's what a pie chart is and how it works. We are going to do some more examples, and we're also going to look at how to make our own pie chart, because that's also important, especially in this module. All right, so let's look down at this next example. With the first one, we were looking at percentages, but this one we're going to look at finding ratios. So we've still got a pie chart broken up into sections, and it still tells us the percentage of each section, but we're going to use it to make ratios. So this one shows movie preferences of 20 people, which would be our total. So that's how many people were sampled, or how many were asked in this example. And it says that each sector, which is a vocab word from this lesson, sector means section or piece of the pie. So each sector includes a number and a percentage. So our total is 20. So these numbers that are in here, so if we start with the green sector that says romance movies, that says 6 next to it. That means 6 out of our 20 prefer romance. Okay, so their example, they did the sci-fi. So we can find the sci-fi sample or sector, which is the light blue. And it says that 4 like sci-fi movies. And again, since our total is 20, we would put it over the total. So it'd be 4 out of 20. But remember, when we're working with fractions, we always want to reduce if possible. So if we have 4 over 20, I'm up above here writing now, we can reduce that, because 4 and 20 have a least or a greatest common factor. Okay, so we can go ahead and reduce that and say, well, 4 out of 20 is the same as 1 out of 5. And they did something different there. They put 1 out of 4, but that was not correct. I need to send that in and tell them to correct that. Oh, I'm reading it wrong. I'm sorry. Just ignore this for a second. I didn't read it all the way through. I'm just doing sci-fi right now. That's my bad. So the sci-fi preference is 4 out of the total, which is 20. So I reduced that because 4 goes into itself 1 time and 4 goes into 25 times. So 1/5 of the total prefer sci-fi. Okay, that example that I thought I was looking at was comparing 2 different genres. I didn't read it all the way before I started. Okay, so then let's skip that one that I marked out and go to that next one here. This says the ratio of people who prefer comedy to romance, and again, we want to simplify, is 4 to 6. Okay, so they got that because they looked at comedy, and it said 4 people preferred comedy. Oh gosh, we're throwing things. And romance, over here, the green sector, was 6. So 4 to 6 is our ratio, and ratios can be written in different ways. We kind of talked about that last semester in our math class. So 4 to 6 with a colon, 4 to 6 with the word 2. These are all different ways to write ratios, or as a fraction, 4 over 6. And then we also want to reduce or simplify this. Okay, the greatest common factor of 4 and 6 is 2. So if we divide top and bottom by 2, we're left with 2 over 3. So that's where they got this. The ratio of people who prefer comedy to romance is 2 to 3, or 2/3. Does that make sense? Good. Okay, good deal. All right, so the next part, and this is probably all we'll have time to finish up with today since I had the problem getting in, but the next part is how to make our own pie chart. So again, this came from your lesson, but I thought it was a really good example and it had good steps for you to follow to make your own pie chart. So this one says the table below shows the music preferences of students at a local high school. Construct a circle graph or a pie chart to represent the data. Sorry, I don't know, I've got allergies, losing my voice here. So we've got the different music types in the first column, and we've got the number of students who prefer each different type in the second column. So that's what our table is showing us. So if we want to make our own pie chart, our first step is to find the whole, which means find the total number of students that were asked. And to do that, we just need to add up these values in the second column. So 105 plus 84 plus 45 plus 36 plus 30. So add all those together. So when we add them all together, our total is 300. So that's our whole, or our total. Okay, this is important because just like when we're working with percentages, we always want to do part over whole. So this is going to come in handy with our pie charts. Okay, so we found the whole. So we added them up, we got 300. So step 2, find the parts. So each item is going to represent a part or a sector of our pie chart. So we want to find exactly what fraction or percent each item represents. So it tells us right here, and this is what we've always done, the easiest way is to divide the part by the whole. Okay, that's something we've worked on a lot this semester. Part over whole. And then we can convert that result to a percent. Okay, so we can do this. So they've done it for us. They did each part. So for rap, 105 divided by the total, which was 300. And they took that number and they multiplied it by 100 to make it a percent, because 105 over 300, if you work that out, you get 0.35. But if we want it as a percent, we multiply that by 100, and that's where they get 35%. So they did that with each genre of music. So rock and roll, they did 84 over 300, and they got 0.28, multiplied by 100 to get the percentage. So they got 28%. Same thing with alternative, 45 divided by 300 times 100, 15%. So that's where our percentages are coming from here. So now we know all of the percentages. Once we've worked through all of our different genres, we know all the percentages. And if we ever want to check to make sure we did it right, you add up those percentages and it should equal 100. If that doesn't equal 100, then we know that we've messed up somewhere along the way. Okay? So that's what we want to do for those. So now we've got our percentages. Step 3 is to find the degrees for each part. Okay, since a circle graph is in the shape of a circle, or a pie chart is in the shape of a circle, we know that a circle always has to have a certain number of degrees total. Okay, and if we remember from geometry, it's not a pretty circle, but a circle always has to have a total of 360 degrees. And we can kind of relate that to our whole that we worked with, which was 300. Okay, so everything's out of 300 in our data, and everything in our pie chart is out of 360. So if we know that for rap music, our percent of the students that preferred it was 35%, we also know that 35% of our circle, which is 360 degrees, whoops, 360 degrees, has to be the degree measure of that sector. Okay, so now we're doing all of our percentages, but now we're doing it out of our circle, which is 360 degrees. So to do that, we move this back into decimal form, 0.35. This is what they've done here. Multiply it by our whole, which is our circle degrees, and then we just multiply those. So 35% of a whole circle is 126 degrees. So we know that our sector of that circle for wrap needs to measure 126 degrees. And that's what they've done for all these. So they moved on to rock and roll, and they said 28% of the students like rock and roll. So 28% of our circle needs to be represented for rock and roll. I'm going to mute everybody because I can hear myself echoing. So when we do that, we get 100.8 degrees. And that's what they've done for all of them. So they just worked their way through each genre and found the degree measure of each sector of that genre for the circle. And just like when we did up here, we added our percentages and made sure they were 100%. This time we add our degrees and make sure that they equal 360 degrees, since that's the total of our circle. And once we know the degree measures, we can draw the circle, and we can use a protractor, or if you're using an online tool, you can make these online and say that you want this percent of the circle or this degree measure of the circle to measure this amount. Okay, and we know that we can draw those angles. Okay, so if this is the center of our circle, we said, let's go back up to wrap. We said it had to be 126 degrees. So we would use our protractor and measure a 126 degree angle in our circle from the center. And that would be our sector for wrap. And then we would just do that for all of the rest of the genres as well, and just keep going until we finish it. So that's how you create a circle graph. And I'm pretty much out of time, so I'll have to pick up from there in a recording and send that to y'all later. But do y'all have any questions over what we've done already? Does that make sense? Cool. Okay, so basically we're just going back to our percentages and applying it to our data and probability. So a lot of times what we're going to be doing when we're working with our circle graphs is comparing data like we did before where we made a ratio. So for example, if we wanted to compare in this circle graph, let's say country to classical, okay, we would say it was 11%, which we could go back up to our numbers. Country, wait, here we go. Country was 36 students and classical was 30 students. So if we want to make a ratio, then we would say 36 to 30, country to classical. And then we would reduce that. We would set it up as a fraction, 36 over 30. You always put the first number first, the one that corresponds to the first data that you're looking at. I'm going to mute y'all. There we go. And then we would just reduce. Okay, so if we find the greatest common factor of 36 and 30, since I'm almost out of time, I'm just going to tell you the greatest common factor here would be 6. So we're going to divide top and bottom by our greatest common factor. 36 divided by 6 is 6, and 30 divided by 6 is 5. So the ratio of country to classical is 6 to 5. So for every 6 students that like country, there's 5 students that like classical, is what that's saying. All right, well, I am out of time. Sorry for the trouble today and not being able to get in on time, but I'll finish up a recording and send that out, and I'll also send this recording as well, and send these notes out. But if you have any specific questions, just shoot me a message, okay? Thank you all for coming.
You're welcome.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone, have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.